How many of you would say that most of your experience of organized religion has taken place in communities centered on weekly services similar to this one? With most of you. If you haven't engaged in formal Zen monastic or semi-monastic training, it might be hard to grasp just how different it is from Unitarian, Universalist, and most Christian styles of worship. In Zen training, one rises early, practices meditation, and performs 2 or 3 services a day with chanting and full prostrations, knees, elbows, and forehead on the floor, punctuated by drums and bells and accompanied by offerings at an altar. One eats according to an elaborately choreographed ritual ballet. It's a lot of ceremony, including how you enter a room, how you sit down and rise from your seat, which direction you turn, how you walk, carry things, use the bathroom, brush your teeth. Zen monastic ritual is a physical style of spiritual training. It frames ordinary activities as holy activities by formalizing them, and thereby dissolves the distinction between ordinary and sacred. Although Zen is practiced by lay people in various ways, it's fundamentally rooted in other ancient Buddhist styles of monastic discipline. When it's done well, it's a beautiful symphony and dance that can really help one to feel part of a greater body, connected to all beings everywhere. By contrast, the casualness of this UU environment, where people chat and have coffee on the way into the sanctuary, not to mention during it, is really kind of stunning. I was raised in Congregational and Presbyterian churches, then had a brief but painful interlude with fundamentalist Christianity in my youth. I started practicing Buddhism in college and have identified as a Soto Zen Buddhist for my entire adult life. I made formal vows as a layperson 40 years ago and as a priest more than 20 years ago. When I decided to seek ordination, I knew that if I were to take on the responsibility of formal religious authority, I needed professional training that I wasn't going to get at my local Zen center or at any of the other Buddhist temples where I had trained. So I enrolled in seminary, an ecumenical Protestant seminary, where I could ask questions about the Bible that the fundamentalists had shunned me for asking. I also did major coursework at a Buddhist seminary and studied religious education at Stark King. During those years, I completed a clinical residency as a hospital chaplain as well. Despite my Protestant upbringing, by then I felt like I was studying in a religious language that had become foreign to me. And I spent a lot of time and energy trying to translate Christian concepts into terms that made more sense to me. I was ordained as a Zen priest a few months after I graduated from seminary. Normally, this marks the beginning of one's training as a priest, even if one has practiced for many years as a layperson. Novice priests are expected to train closely with their teacher for several years and to complete other steps before full ordination. I couldn't do all of that because I promptly moved to the East Coast to undertake a doctoral program in religious studies. My Japanese teacher was on the West Coast when he wasn't overseas, and that made the language and cultural differences between us much harder to navigate. I've been mentored by several American women Zen teachers to whom I am immensely grateful. They all have maintained the daily monastic routines of Soto Zen for many decades, which I admire. I've done it for months at a time and have found it to be deeply meaningful, even though it has also been painful in various ways. However, a life centered primarily on meditation and monastic training simply is not my vocation. I taught college and graduate courses full-time for a decade and did some Buddhist campus ministry and community interfaith work on the side. I found myself on the liberal end of the spectrum with the UU ministers. I really appreciated that they didn't assume that you had to refer to God to discuss religion or spirituality. Then my academic department was dismantled in a strategic reorganization. So I returned home to Northern California and started working full-time as a hospice chaplain, which, it turns out, I love. During the process of becoming board certified as a professional chaplain in 2023, it became glaringly apparent that although there are a few professional chaplains who are also Zen priests, in general, American Zen is not set up to support this kind of ministry. This is because of how Zen took root among non-Asian Americans during the 20th century. Long story short, there's no overarching denominational body like the Unitarian Universalist Association or the UU Ministerial Association. There are no widely agreed upon or enforceable standards for who should be a priest or teacher, or what to do if one goes astray. As you can imagine, this has caused some problems. The UUA has clear, high, but achievable standards for ministerial fellowship. I endorse its values and principles without reservation. I appreciate its commitment to deconstructing social injustice through active engagement in communities and in democratic governance. It has lots of professional chaplains and multiple ways of supporting us. So although I have been UU adjacent for a long time, I finally listened to the UU and Zen clergy friends who had been nudging me for years to explore dual affiliation. So I began attending this congregation in 2023 and joined as a member last February. I now chair the worship committee, and I want to underline what Reverend Aya said. If you think you might be interested, please come forward. When I started the process of applying for dual ministerial fellowship last fall, I found I'd already met most of the requirements. When I asked the UUP board to consider sponsoring me, I was gratified by their agreement. Thank you, Jano. That just means they think I have the potential to be a UU minister. The final decision is up to the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. I still have several steps to complete, including a detailed psychological evaluation and a career assessment. At this point, my main career goal is to retire, but I do hope to continue doing various forms of ministry for at least a decade or more. In less than 2 years, the warmth and support I have felt in this community and the collegiality I have experienced from UU ministers has far exceeded my experience in decades of Zen practice. There are exceptions, don't get me wrong, but the overall contrast has been quite striking to me. It's bittersweet to say that. Zen is still the soil in which I'm rooted. It shapes my worldview and my ethics, and I don't experience any conflict between it and Unitarian Universalism, but there are only so many hours in a day. So I've chosen to focus my time and energies here. I feel genuinely welcome here and encouraged to offer what I can. The process of forming a dual identity as a Unitarian Universalist hasn't been entirely easy. I have to develop fluency in another religious language and another set of customs. I'm practicing different ways of using a religious space and expressing my religious commitments. I'm learning to sing hymns again. Note to AV team, please be sure to mute my mic while I do. Thank you for your support.